Good morning. This is Kamyar Gavechi. I'm with the Department of Water Resources. I manage statewide integrated water management, and I've had the opportunity to work on the California Water Plan update since 2000. I wanted to welcome all of the Policy Advisory Committee members and other participants to this orientation webinar. This is the launch of the public outreach for preparing update 2018 of the water plan. And on behalf of Director Mark Callan and DWR Executive, I wanted to thank you all up front for agreeing to dedicate time to this very important state water planning effort. And I know you all have tremendously busy calendars and work, and it is really an honor and a great opportunity for the state of California to benefit from your diverse perspectives in preparing the water plan. I'd also like to welcome and thank all of the other participants on this webinar. As you may know, all of the Water Plan Public Advisory Committee meetings, Policy Advisory Committee meetings, are public meetings and are guided by the state open meeting law, or what some call Bagley-Keene. And so it really is an added opportunity to get broader participation and input. We have approximately 120 registered participants for the webinar today and on Friday. People can self-select on which one they will attend. So what I'd like to do is do a quick review of our webinar objectives. In so doing, I'll do introductions of those who are presenting on this webinar. We will have Paul Macera describe the new direction and the proposed content for Water Plan Update 2018. Lou Moeller will then provide you information about the role of the Policy Advisory Committee, a proposed meeting and deliverable schedule and work plan. We will provide everyone a link to the Bagley-Keene Act for your reference. Then Jenny Marr will give you a preview of the upcoming inaugural Policy AC meeting, the first face-to-face meeting, the morning of October 25th, followed that same day by the first of 3 plenary meetings at the Sacramento Auto Museum. Jenny will also give you a preview, a heads up, of a phone survey that we plan to do during the plenary meeting. I'd also like to take this opportunity to announce that we have also scheduled a Tribal Advisory Committee orientation webinar on the morning of October 19th. The agenda for that webinar is similar to the Policy Advisory Committee webinar. I'd like to now just introduce also Lisa Butler and Kirsten Pringle. They are with MWH and are providing facilitation and meeting support for this update of the water plan and this webinar today. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Butler to provide you just a real quick overview of the webinar logistics before we get into the content. Lisa?
Thank you, Kamyar. So we have so far about half of the registered are actually online with us, so that's wonderful, but that is a big group of folks. So for all of you who can hear me, if you wouldn't mind taking a look at your control panel, and there should be a place for you to just raise your hand. So if you could go ahead and click on that raise your hand button, Yay, all right, great. I'm seeing quite a few hands going up, so that means our audio is working well. Also, I have the benefit of being able to see physically who's logged in, and I'm happy to say that we have both alumni, CAMARA alumni advisory committee members, as well as our current advisory committee members logged in. So that's great to see everybody. What we'll be doing is we're going to encourage you to use the chat box. We have a lot of folks online, so it's going to be a little bit hard to open mics for people to check in, but if time permits, we're happy to do that as well. But go ahead and look for that question box. We'll be taking questions after each of the items, and then at the end of the agenda, there is a large block of public comment time. So we're looking forward to hearing from all of you, from the members of the public that are participating, as well as the advisory committee throughout the full meeting. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn that back to Kamyar.
Thank you, Lisa. So as part of the introduction, because we have so many people and really don't have the time for everyone on the webinar to introduce themselves, I would like to take you to the list of advisory committee members. Lou Moeller right now is showing the home page of California Water Plan. If you go to the corner upper right under collaboration and click on meeting materials, that will take you to the materials for today's webinar plus all future meetings of the water plan. And one of the items there, you'll see policy AC member list. These are the almost 30 members of the Policy Advisory Committee who have been invited to by the Director, Mark Cowan, to participate in this update of the water plan. The Director Cowan sent a formal invitation letter to all of the Policy AC members earlier this week or yesterday, and so it's now official, and we'll talk about what the charge of the Policy AC is and what we hope to accomplish later in this webinar. Lou, if you could then go to the agenda for today's webinar. We will, and just scroll down, please. After I finish my intros, as I mentioned, Paul Massera will talk about the focus of Water Plan Update 2018. Lou will get into some of the nitty-gritty, but not too long-winded about the logistics and administrative part of this process for the Policy AC. And then Jenny will give a preview of the upcoming October 25 fifth meetings. And then we will have plenty, as you see, time for Q&A after each of the agenda items. And we also have set aside a time, item 5, for public comment, where the Policy AC members, as well as any other participants, can comment on let us know whatever they'd like us to know. So with that, I will again thank everyone for participating. I'm going to turn it over to Paul Massera.
All right, good morning. As Kamyar mentioned, I'm Paul Massera. I am the program manager for the Water Plan Update process. What I'd like to do for you today is go through a fairly broad set of topics that describe where we're headed with this next water plan. It'll be a light touch across many topics. And then what I'd like to do is invite you for the subsequent meetings on October 25th, which we'll talk about in more depth shortly. That's when we'll actually get into a little more detail on many of these topics. So at a certain point, it may feel like we're a rock skipping across kind of the surface of a pond, but I want to cover the whole breadth of where we're headed for this water plan. I'm also going to stop about halfway and invite questions as well. So what I'd like to do first is kind of walk you through the storyline. This is the comprehensive end-to-end description of where we're headed with the next water plan and what the focus will be. So starting right out of the gate, I want to flag the fact that the Brown administration prepared a water action plan that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. And that plan will materially shape, it has materially shaped where we're headed for this, with this next water plan. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that shortly. To that end, we've identified 6 of the most important intended outcomes of Update 2018, and I'll lay those out for you as well. Those 6 intended outcomes are in pursuit and in compliance with the directives in the Governor's Water Action Plan. An important piece of where we're headed is aligning the many important state initiatives that have occurred, a lot of them since the release of the last water plan, the 2013 water plan update. Our intent, and I'll go into again more detail shortly, but our intent is to identify and roll those initiatives into the 2018 water plan. Despite the many initiatives, there's a lot more work to do, i.e. filling the gaps. Well, first and foremost, what we will be doing is defining sustainability in a way that we can actually identify policies in pursuit of sustainability and identify a tracking process, identify and deploy a tracking process so we can demonstrate that we are on the path to sustainability. And I would just flag that as a significant stride forward. I view it really as kind of evolving an ideal that has been around for over a decade of sustainability. To actually define it such that we can pursue it is what we are going to do in the next water plan. We can't tackle all the state's issues in one water plan cycle. However, we've identified 4 primary barriers to sustainability that we will discuss and broach and provide recommendations for in Update 2018, among other things. That's 4 primary barriers to sustainability. And in pursuit of overcoming those barriers, I'll highlight some key features of Update 2018 that will enable us to begin to overcome those barriers. And I'd also like to make a point that the construct, the framework, the approach that we're using for Update 2018 will actually increase in value in subsequent cycles. And I'll explain how that works in a minute. But obviously a big part of that is actually just developing a consistent framework with the lasting power to span multiple cycles. So that's a hint of what I'm going to talk about in the way of compounding value. And then I'd like to wrap up with just a little bit more detail on what a finance plan will look like. This is, and I'll get into it in a second, but this is a primary directive in the Governor's Water Action Plan, Action 10, 10 of 10 actions, but it directs state government to develop a comprehensive finance plan. I'm going to provide a little bit more detail on what that means and what that's going to start to look like. So again, just to underscore the influence of the action plan on the next California water plan, I think this plan really provides some cohesiveness across state agencies. It provides some clear policy directives that enable us to frame our plan around them. So this is going to have a material effect on how we go about updating 2018 water plan. I will mention, I'll acknowledge that DWR is not the only state agency, obviously, that had a hand in the action plan. And as Kamiar mentioned earlier, alluded to, we will reach out to other state agencies. There's the principal agencies that were involved in developing the Water Action Plan, for example, Cal EPA, CDFA, the Resources Agency, and their respective departments. Just to kind of unpack a little bit what Action 10 of the Water Action Plan calls for, I wanted to first kind of go into what it recognizes, because this really sets up the rationale and the logic behind where we're headed. So first of all, it recognizes that there's a need to develop a more full and a more comprehensive and common understanding of the finance complexities, just where we are now. And that's actually a key finding in the finance planning effort of the prior water plan, the 2013 water plan update. Recognition that given the actions in the action plan and by extension in the 2018 water plan, for that matter in the 2013 water plan, base budgets for state, federal, local government, there was broad recognition across stakeholders and in the Governor's Water Action Plan that base budgets tended to be inadequate and generally not stable enough to support the activities recommended in these types of plans. This is a biggie and a common theme from the last water plan, one of three pillars of the last water plan, the need for the state to align behind these common outcomes. We need to become more proactive is one of the messages in the Governor's Water Action Plan, that means getting out ahead of the crises and making sure that we're investing with the long view in mind. Drought and flood risk is a prime example, getting out in front of that and implementing actions for these oftentimes foreseeable types of risks. Given funding cycles on an annual basis, given the magnitude of investment required, we estimated hundreds of billions of dollars over the next few decades in Update 2013. For this water plan, we need to prioritize. What can we do in the next 5 years? What are the most important things that we need to do as a state government at a statewide scale and supporting regional management over the next 5 years? And then lastly, I kind of already alluded to it, we need a more stable and reliable funding source to fund said activities that will be queued up, and I'll describe how we're going to arrive at those activities and priorities so that we all have a common understanding. Now, specifically what the Governor's Water Action Plan calls for. Removal of barriers. Again, many findings in Update 2013 on the types of barriers. Prop 218 came up again and again from a local perspective. In the flood management sector, significant constraints were identified. So obviously, one of the primary activities will be looking at how can we overcome these barriers to local management, and local and state funding, of water management. We need to develop a state government water financing strategy, and that's what's called for in Action 10, and that's what we're going to do in Update 2018. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And then there's some more specific directives in the action plan. Explore user and polluter fees as an alternative, a potential means for stabilizing revenue as indicated or recognized in the previous slide as a necessity. So I mentioned that we've identified some key intended outcomes of Update 2018 in pursuit of what I just showed you, kind of a breakdown of what's in the Governor's Water Action Plan. First and foremost, and kind of at the highest level, really enabling us to begin on a trajectory or sustain a trajectory, depending on your perspective, but provide a trajectory towards sustainability in a meaningful, practical way. In doing so, a primary activity will have to be, and again, this is kind of at the general scale, but increasing the effectiveness of policy and investment. What does that mean? It means once you've identified your intended outcomes, circling back and looking at the results in some kind of process tracking mechanism, which we have a proposal for 2018, and looking where the gaps are. Did we meet that intended outcome? If no, where is the course correction? What I'm basically describing is adaptive management, and I'll talk a little bit more about that again shortly. But the need to enhance effectiveness is key to keeping us on a track towards sustainability. Tracking progress, I already mentioned that. A little more specifically, and I kind of built up to this with alluding to it in some of my prior slides, but we intend to prepare a 5-year policy and investment strategy, and this will reflect the prioritization that I also referred to earlier. And then the question is, how do you pay for it? So another deliverable or specific outcome of this water plan, Update 2018, will be developing an accompanying finance plan and strategy that includes alternatives to stabilize funding or provide more stable funding. So I'd also, in my overview, talked a little bit about these state initiatives that are in play. A lot of significant activity over the last couple of years. So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which I'll refer to going forward as SGMA, that was a game changer in California's role in managing groundwater. And not only that, but by association, it affects how we plan at a regional scale. Proposition 1, also in 2014, has significant funding, $7.1 billion, and a good chunk of that being for storage activities, very significant in the terms of financing water management. There's also been executive orders in reaction to the drought that has shaped and in some cases reshaped the state's role in managing water on a little more real-time basis in some cases. And then also, similar to Update 2013, where we aligned dozens of state plans, mined recommendations, prioritized, and laid out as a state government water management plan. These are the types of actions that we need to take. In this case, the difference is, for Update 2013, we had over 300 recommendations. For Update 2018, the logical next step is, let's narrow and focus and prioritize for a 5-year period. So again, a lot of initiatives in play, a lot of benefits. However, there is more to be done. We still, in many parts of the state, live with an unacceptable flood risk. In many parts of the state, many sectors, unreliable water supplies. Despite the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, there is continued depletion and degradation of groundwater resources. That's a significant consideration in this water plan. And then, of course, habitat species declines that are occurring in portions of the state as well. So what I'd like to do, let me just back up one slide. Let's see, preview. I'd like to pause at this point before going into a little bit more detail on defining sustainability and getting into a little more nitty-gritty, and offer an opportunity for clarifying questions at this stage. And is our
Paul, this is Kamyar. For folks on the webinar, we do have one question from Colin Bailey with the EJ Coalition for Water. He's asking, says the governor has also identified Prop 218 as a barrier to achieving the affordability prong of California's human right to water policy. Can we adopt affordability as an overarching goal of the state water plan?
There's a couple places where there are opportunities, and I think where I would even say we're starting to broach that. Without getting into too much detail for this overview, we have principles which guide the way that we plan. We're not sharing them today, but we'll most likely share them at the upcoming meeting. Principles that guide the way we plan and the way we do business and drive considerations in planning. There are principles that relate to environmental justice and DAC disadvantaged communities. So that is an opportunity, and I would say we're already getting there. I would be interested in hearing feedback as to if we are there, but that would be my first reaction to that opportunity. I don't know, Cami, if you had any other suggestions.
Yeah, this coming up, we're going to get a lot more into that in the plenary meeting and the inaugural Policy AC meeting as we get more into what we mean by sustainability.
Last question?
That's the only question so far.
Okay.
We got another one just popped up. Will the Policy Advisory Committee be provided key information on the similar efforts taken for the 2013 update, that is, not to reinvent the wheel? That's from Mark Seitz.
If I understand the question properly, will we be leveraging the good work that was done in Update 2013? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So that being the case, the answer is yes. I mentioned a little bit on the fact that we had hundreds of recommendations that need to be brought in for consideration for prioritization in Update 2018. So a lot of good work there. The finance planning framework has provided a great foundation as well for developing our investment strategy and our finance plan that I just mentioned on the previous slide. And I'm sure there's other ways that we can talk about as well, other pieces of information from 2013 that will be useful in framing 2018.
So those are the questions for now, Paul. Let's move on, and if others come forward, I'll let you know.
Okay. So we have left off with the recognition that there's still a lot to do, despite a lot of recent initiatives that are again, effective and beneficial. But there's always the but, and the but is that we need to do more. I described these three categories, and four categories, excuse me. More specifically, and you'll recall in the beginning of this presentation, I rather enthusiastically indicated that we have a definition or a description, if you will, of sustainability that enables us to identify it, have a common understanding of what it is, which I believe in and of itself is a significant innovation, and then also to materially pursue it, or demonstrably pursue sustainability. And so this, this is a very short part of the description. So again, we'll get into more detail as this progress unfolds. But really, what we're suggesting is sustainability is not an endpoint. It's not something where we can declare ourselves sustainable. Rather, it is a contiguous management strategy that indicates where the path is and tracks whether or not we're on that path and course corrects with investment and policy as we go. And that being the case, sometimes it's helpful to illustrate what it's not. So what we're also suggesting is not sustainability or does not keep us on a path to sustainability necessarily. Things like project scale tweaks to the existing system, they're necessary, they're beneficial. We're just suggesting that it's insufficient for bringing statewide sustainability path to fruition. There's also been a common notion that California water problems can be enumerated and then solved. So certainly past attempts have approached problem solving in that way. We're suggesting a little bit different paradigm in that, again, there needs to be a continuity to the way we manage, track performance, and course correct over time. And that there is no real silver bullet, and we've all heard that, panacea, and one and done is not an effective management strategy. And I already touched on the third bullet there, so let me move on. And so getting, again, a little bit into the specificity, we're suggesting and framing up for Update 2018 in our description of attainable or trackable sustainability is really a dynamic balance between many things. A lot of folks are, I'm sure, familiar with the 3 E's or the 3 legs of the stool, economics, equity, and environment. This is a little bit of an expansion, but not a major departure. I would just flag probably enriching experiences as one of the maybe newer features in most planning circles. And just to be clear on that, a quick explanation, really that recognizes not only recreation, that's pretty straightforward, but also some cultures derive religious and spiritual well-being from water-based natural resources and so on. So it's actually meant to be a little bit broader and a little more robust than recreation and deserving of its own category. And again, I think the key point here is I think those categories are pretty straightforward and all-inclusive for the water benefits that we and our stakeholders identified for the previous water plan update. What the important point here is really the dynamic balance between how we invest in those. That's the key strategy for how we identify whether or not we are on the track towards sustainability. And by the way, I won't go into detail now, but we also have a framework which speaks to each of those 4 categories. And that's where we can begin to get in more detail of identifying intended outcomes, performing assessments on how we're doing, and creating policy to create and sustain the balance. So I mentioned also earlier in the overview, we can't tackle every tough or thorny issue in California water management. However, there's 4 significant issues that we have decided to broach and update 2018. And this implicitly and on the front end even actually starts helping us define what some of the priorities may be coming out of this process on the back end with the recommendations and so on. So the first one is shared intent. Again, having that common understanding of sustainability. And as I just showed you, we have a framework to do just that. Governance, obviously, with the thousands of water management entities across California at different scales. When you overlay an objective of statewide sustainability, the governance may not be where it needs to be, and I'm sure all of us can attest to certain circumstances where there can be enhancements in the way governance occurs within California. Finance, we talked a lot about, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that also later. And then regulations and permitting, the statutory framework. An example here is single species management. This is not a new conversation. The aha here is that this is something we're going to broach as one of 4 primary barriers to sustainability in the water plan. And just to clarify what we mean by regulations and permitting and referring to the statutory framework, the example of single species management, as we've heard in many circles, does not intend to enable us to manage towards an ecosystem-based outcome. I would even say on the project tracking front, we are able to track expenditures, we're able to track compliance with statutes and prescriptions, but are we, well, that's a rhetorical question, we're not in a position to materially track sustainability on a statewide scale. And so regulations and permitting, that's part of that big discussion of how we go about enhancing our ability to do that for Update 2018. So some of the key features that we've framed up to help broach and overcome these barriers and speak to the directives in the Governor's Water Action Plan, and also, as I mentioned earlier, basically enhance the effectiveness of state government investments and policies, water management policies. Aligning of these initiatives into a 5-year, I'll say comprehensive state water policy and investment strategy, and the accompanying finance plan. In order to effectively track progress and determine if we are being effective, we need to, upfront on the front end, and this is what we're proposing for 2018, we need to articulate what the societal values are. Those are those 4 things that I showed you in a couple slides earlier, and the more specific intended outcomes associated with those societal values. What are we trying to accomplish? We need to answer that. I mean, it's pretty intuitive from a planning perspective. If we want to know if we've been successful on the front end, we need to articulate what we want to achieve. And I would suggest this concept goes beyond implementing a project or tracking expenditures. I mentioned that as an example. We're looking to be more esoteric on many levels and illustrating tangible improvements in ecosystems, for example, for that particular societal value, or a healthy economy with some metrics and indicators associated with that. That's another example. But we need to indicate it on the front end, and then you take the next logical step of identifying what the right actions are to get you to those intended outcomes. In many ways, it's turning the planning strategy, many planning approaches kind of upside down, where we first identify where we want to be, then we identify the strategies, as opposed to coming right out of the gate saying we need to do X, Y, and Z without even articulating what we expect out of it. And I talked about a structured and consistent prioritization method and the value that brings to statewide sustainable water management planning, and then practical ways to measure progress. So I'm kind of reinforcing a theme, if you can tell, throughout these slides. At this point, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, and this is where a lot of the good work from Update 2013 comes into play. We're going to use what was then referred to as the finance planning framework, because that had a lot of valuable stakeholder input, a lot of face time with a lot of diverse stakeholders that actually came together behind a set of components that together create a viable and effective finance plan. And it gives us a planning construct that we can work from in a more orderly and consistent way. So, and it scopes the finance plan that I've referred to that we'll be developing for Update 2013. And what you'll also notice is it's much more than simply compiling a set of proposed projects, estimating the cost, and finding a way to pay for them. This is much broader. It has the promise to be much more effective, especially when you look at, again, statewide scale water sustainability objectives. So hearkening back to what I've been talking about, shared intended outcomes. What do we want to achieve? Identifying that up front. conducting assessments. We know what we want to achieve. What's the best way to do it? What are the most feasible methods? What are the most cost-effective methods? Whatever the metrics are, and we do have metrics that are emerging to help tell us that, what the most viable and effective policies and actions are to meet these shared intended outcomes. Then we look at, okay, our existing funding constructs, both the stability and the adequacy of the funding relative to the types of policies and actions that were identified as the most feasible, most preferable, highest priority projects. Okay, where are the gaps? We do have a presumed and observed, I might say, retrospectively, gap already between the things that we want to do and the funds available to do them. Identifying it in a quantitative and specific way will enable us to better identify funding going forward. Identifying state roles and partnerships. This became important as part of our discussion through the Update 2013 process because we didn't want to presume current conditions continued, I guess is one way to phrase it. We wanted to identify where the state's role can be most effective, and this particularly pertains to regional capacity development and supporting regional planning and regional sustainability, because that is kind of an area where state government is emerging and evolving, and we would like to work with stakeholders in identifying what those optimum roles are and at a statewide scale. But the point is that this step is necessary before we can get to what the funding demands are, number 6. And again, I would just point out that oftentimes a conventional thought is that all you need is step 6 and 7 and you've got yourself a finance plan. And we're broadening that definition to, again, be more effective in the way that we go about achieving the intended outcomes and tracking performance and identifying what the return on investments are, if you will. There's other ways of describing that, the effectiveness, but what are we getting for our investment? Does it actually meet our intended outcome, and to what extent? And the point I'd like to make here now is if you can envision almost a cyclic approach to this. So in other words, we'll go through this cycle for Update 2018, where I'm saying the real value is, when we take a long view to this entire process, is the consistent construct that we are proposing we use for this and future updates. The value of the application of this will compound over time. And how so? Because we will clarify intended outcomes on the second pass. We will course correct with the policy and actions that maybe weren't quite as effective as we thought, and basically go through the entire cycle again as part of the water plan update cycle. And another point, I don't want to digress too much on this, but the necessity of a consistent cyclic approach is evident when we recognize the complexity of the water management system. The fact that we don't know, in many cases, what actions will effectively meet what outcomes and to what extent. We have to implement, track, learn, course correct, and again, go through that cyclic motion, each time enhancing our ability to develop more and more robust plans. And so that leads me to the final slide, which warrants a little bit of explanation. And what we're showing here, and again, I'm talking about the long view and the value of this approach for carrying over to subsequent updates. I think this can be a true legacy where we actually establish this consistent process where we're bringing in state initiatives, you can see on the far left, and we're setting intended outcomes as shown with the steps kind of on the bottom left of the diagram, which is kind of shorthand for what I just showed you, the cycle of planning, implementing, and funding and tracking. So that's great. For 2018, we're going to actually demonstrate how that process and construct works and its value. The metaphor here is that, the diameter of those ribbons increases over time as we move over to the right. That metaphor is we do have sharpened and more clarified intended outcomes. We have continuously enhanced ability to perform accurate assessments and better data as time goes on. We've learned, we've implemented things that maybe didn't quite meet our intended outcome that we've course corrected. So the point is we get more and more robust as a plan and as a planning process going forward over time. The last thing I'll point out here, if you look along the bottom timeline between the 2018 plan and the 2013 plan, we are proposing and we're recognizing that water policy and issues arise and are managed and broached on a time step shorter than 5 years. We talked about this at the end of the Update 2013 process. So what we're suggesting is in actually reporting annually. So an annual sustainability outlook, how are we doing? And then where the gaps are and where the policy guidance for the course correction can come into play. That way we can inform policy discussions as they're unfolding and also be more nimble, if you will, to react to issues as they arise, many of which can be unforeseen in California's water management. And with that, that concludes my explanation. I know there's a lot of content there, and I think we have time for some clarifying questions. And let me add, just before we turn it over to questions, we will be elaborating and clarifying at upcoming meetings. So again, this was just kind of a smattering of the content that we'll be focusing on for Update 2018.
So thank you, Paul. This is Kamyar. Just wanted to underscore that a lot of the content, especially the finance planning framework components, were developed with considerable input and discussion with the stakeholders during the 2013 update of the water plan, and many of those contributors are on the webinar today. So again, hopefully you see the value and outcome of your work, and we certainly intend to build on it as we prepare Update 2018. So with that, I wanted to again encourage webinar participants to submit questions for clarification and any specific comments that may have occurred to you as Paul was presenting kind of the focus of Update 2018. What I'll do is, rather than take a pause, I'll go ahead and invite Lou Moeller to begin the next agenda item, and as questions come in, we will take them. So, Lou?
All right. Well, thank you. And welcome, everybody. I'm Lou Moeller with the Water Plan Project Manager on this and kind of representing the rest of the team. What I was going to cover today, and I'm going to go right into our thing, but we have a policy AC charge, and I'm going to open that right from the website. One thing I'm going to mention is that we'll be updating this one, and we'll be adding a link to the Bagley-Keene Act in here, so I'm going to mention that right off the top. We are, and I can take you to that today, but we will be putting up a different version of this, which only difference is that there will be a link that you could follow from this document to the Bagley-Keene guidance document that they have there. So I'm going to first go through this charge, and this is basically what we're asking of you all as a policy advisory committee, and this is the charge. We have a little preamble. I want to, and I'm going to kind of highlight with the cursor as I go along here, but the role of the policy AC is to provide representative perspectives and advice to DWR in preparation of the water plan. They also assist in communicating and serve by invitation of DWRs in communicating and advancing the water plan goals, objectives, and recommendations. And then that the members are served by invitation of DWR's director, and he will actually have the responsibility for all appointments. But we've sent out the letters here recently.
Yeah, this Kamyar, and for folks on the webinar, in the webinar control panel, a copy of the Bagley-Keene Act is actually there as a PDF file, if you care to look at it now.
Now, it goes on to talk about a few other things here as well, but we as you've heard from Paul this morning, there's been an evolution of the water plan, and we have a fairly substantial evolution in this latest version here as well. Wanted to drop down to roles and responsibilities. So we're asking you to, act as a liaison, communicate information to and from your organization, act as a member that will enhance among all your membership, contribute data information to clarify issues and assumptions, act collectively and seek common ground where possible. Now we understand that that's not always going to be, there's going to be positions by your organization and you're going to have to stick to those things as well, but where we can find that common ground, it would be helpful. Then attendance to the policy AC meetings and the annual plenary meetings. And at the end of my presentation, we'll go over what our schedule is for that. And we will do an offline doodle polls. We know that your schedules are somewhat fixed and stuff. We have it down to what year and month we want to have it, and we'd like to get back from you guys the best dates that we might be able to schedule that. And then acting in good faith, and I think that goes without saying. From the standpoint of the water plan team, we agree to provide staff support and, as needed, a facilitator for these meetings, collect and organize data. We'll actually draft text for group review. So we're going to be bringing you different aspects of the next water plan update for your review. We'll provide technical support where needed, provide physical arrangements, and so we have a plenary coming up this month, the latter part of this month, and we're active in setting up those arrangements, including the option for lunch there, and providing any requested information that you seek so you can print. Our executive sponsor agrees to provide resources for this effort, and in consultation with other state agencies, provide the policy perspective for the administration, and then provide overall direction. So the time commitment we had said about, we're anticipating 2 to 3 times a year for the policy AC to meet. We're also anticipating 3 annual plenary meetings, and I'll go into that a little bit more when I show you the schedule as well. Oh, well, yes, we'll also be, forgot to mention that the state agents, we're going to be engaging other state agencies in the State Agency Steering Committee, and we'll also be engaging California Native American tribes in a Tribal Advisory Committee. The Tribal Advisory Committee is fairly parallel to the process that we're following with the policy AC. Again, we're wanting to have members commit to committing to attending all the meetings as much as possible. If you could let us know when you're not, and let me know, and I've given you my information to basically notify us when you're not able to make it, if you're going to have a substitute or something like that. We'd like to know that ahead of time too. We have a bit here on disclosure as well. This is getting back into the fact that there are times when there's a position that you must take with your stakeholder group that you're representing there, and you may not. It may conflict with something that the water plan is actually heading towards, or the group as a whole is looking at. So it talks to that. And then in decision making, we're here trying to move forward most issues that are kind of common, and if there is support for that level of support, it will be noted as we're going along. If there's fundamental disagreement, we'll try to get to agreement if we can, and that in the end, I think our executive sponsor will note those disagreements and consider those as we move forward. So ultimately, DWR does have a decision to put what we think is best in the update 2013. I'm going to head back to the meeting materials again. Meetings and deliverables. Well, I wanted to go to, sorry, if you go back here. That's not up on this. So I have a detailed, this is, and I've shown you the this is more of a work plan engagement schedule. It has very details on these first two dates that we've set for this month. So we have a Policy Advisory Committee orientation webinar here. We also have our first actual meeting will occur in the morning, and Jenny will talk about that a little bit right after mine. And we have a plenary scheduled here as well. We then have other Policy Advisory Committee meetings we're identifying a certain month that we're looking at this point. Of course, plenaries there. We have a joint Public Advisory Committee and Tribal AC that we're anticipating here in August 2018. Then some content that will be coming, and you'll see the content throughout these, what we're intending to bring to those different plenaries. And these are parts of the water plan that we will be bringing, and these are the titles right out of our outline that we have right now. And so we'll be bringing content to you in these different meetings as well. The plenary, we also will have a draft here and right here. So January 2017 is a hard date that we're going to have to try to hit because we need to have a public review draft by the end of,
I think that's January 2018.
2018 is.
That's a typo.
That's a typo, I'm sorry. Yep. Never happens, right? So, yes, anyhow, we
just gained a year.
We gained a year. Thank you very much, because I need it. Anyway, we have the public review draft there. Then we're going to have, in the last year, approximately, there's a lot of process that has to occur for us to actually get things through approvals and finally get a pre-administrative draft. We will have some previews of that kind of material in this last year as well. And we'll have a final release there as well. And as Paul had mentioned, this is a cyclic thing. We're going to continue to work on these kind of things in the next cycle as well. So this kind of gives you an overview of what we have in that.
So this is Kamyar. I just wanted to underscore some of the comments we received back from Policy AC members was, what's the level of commitment? And this work plan is intended to help you assess that. We're really trying to be efficient with the number of meetings that you have. Right now, it's listed as 6 meetings between now and the end of 2018, and then the 3 annual plenary meetings. And we intend to stick to that. As you and others may indicate, we might have some workshops on particular topics if needed, if and as needed. But I wanted to again reassure you that we don't want this to be a heavy time commitment. And the reason is we've done a lot of the groundwork in Update 2013. So that was a much more process-intensive effort because we were tackling a lot of content issues and topics. We've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and we're now going to build on that work rather than rehash it, as it was noted earlier. So I hope that this gives Policy AC members some comfort that this is doable and ultimately of value to you and your constituents. So I wanted to just see if there are any other questions. Lou, were you going to go to that slide on the, yeah, that just kind of graphically shows the information that's on that table. And the top of the timeline are the key deliverables, and the bottom are the key engagement meetings, both for the Policy Advisory Committee and the Tribal Advisory Committee. Also wanted to note that in May of 2018, we intend to have the third Tribal Water Summit, working with the Tribal Advisory Committee and others.
All right, with that, I'm going to.
So I just wanted to, again, this Kamiar, see if there are any questions, specific questions for Lou and or Paul. And as we're waiting for those to come in, and if it's been crystal clear, great. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Marr.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jenny Marr. I'm helping out on Update 2018. And I know you've heard a little bit about some of the upcoming meetings, but I'm going to expand on it a little and pique your interest and whet your appetite for attending these upcoming public meetings. So first off, on Friday, the 14th, we're going to do a repeat of this webinar. So you are definitely welcome to rejoin us on Friday if you unfortunately missed something on this webinar, or think of some questions and want to participate again and get your questions answered before the next policy AC meeting on the morning of October 25th. So on October 25th, we'll have the first face-to-face of the policy AC members. We'll be meeting at the Tao Auto Museum here in Sacramento. During this meeting, we'll expand a little bit on some topics that were covered today. So we'll describe some context of Update 2018, including drivers of change and recent initiatives that we touched on, including the California Water Action Plan and SGMA. We'll present a little bit more detail on the focus of Update 2018, including envisioning California water sustainability and identifying intended outcomes for water management in the state. We'll also provide a recap of the Policy AC Charge work plan and meeting deliverable schedule, similar to what you heard today, in case there were members of the Policy AC that were not able to attend today's orientation or Friday's orientation. And then we'll also provide a preview of what will be discussed at the plenary. So our first Update 2018 plenary is the afternoon of the 25th. So we encourage Policy AC members to block out the whole day and attend the Policy AC meeting in the morning and Update 2018 plenary meeting in the afternoon. They will both take place at Tao Auto Museum. When you RSVP for the plenary, you have the option to select lunch. So we encourage folks to stay, have lunch, and the Auto Museum is actually open to meeting participants. So you know, during breaks, at lunchtime, feel free to walk around the museum. Folks that are just participating in the plenary are welcome to arrive early, eat lunch, and also you know, enjoy the museum. So at the plenary, we'll be talking about in a little bit more detail the evolution of Water Plan Update 2018 and how we're building on Update 2013. Update 2018 specifically will report on implementation of the California Water Action Plan, develop a 5-year investment strategy and finance plan, as Paul described earlier, and recommend long-term state policy and investment priorities for water management. You know, really what we want to start building in this plenary is a common understanding of sustainable water management and what that looks like in California. Invited speakers for the plenary include secretaries of the California Natural Resources Agency, California Department of Food and Ag, and Cal EPA. We've also have speakers including the Director and Deputy Director of Integrated Water Management for DWR, Update 2018 managers, and state agency program staff, so DWR program staff. During the plenary, we'll be doing a phone survey. So we invite you to bring your new iPhone 7s, your smartphones, your flip phones, whatever has text capability, and we'll be doing a text-based cell phone survey, which we'll be providing more detailed instructions at the meeting. But if you have text capability, you're able to participate live. The cell phone survey will be done to elicit information on how well sustainability is defined at the state and regional levels. And we'll also ask questions about significant challenges or barriers to water management in the state to just start framing the conversation for the plenary and content for Update 2018. So the agendas for the plenary and the inaugural Policy AC meeting will be posted tomorrow. And Lou's been showing you on the website where the meeting materials are kept. So they'll be posted there. They'll also be announced in the e-news. So if you're not on the e-news email list, we encourage you to sign up. And lastly, we've got the Tribal AC meeting or webinar on the 19th, and it'll parallel this meeting pretty closely, just an orientation for the Tribal AC members.
Thank you, Jenny.
Kept it brief.
I also wanted to underscore that we do and intend to engage federal agency participation in Update 2013. We did that in part through collaboration with the California Biodiversity Council, which is a state, federal, local council. We intend to continue that, and we also are working and have as a member the California Resource Conservation Districts to engage and link with local conservation efforts. So with that, that brings us to the public comment period. And I wanted to give people on the webinar, Policy AC members and others, an opportunity to, if you could just send a message saying you'd like to, you have comments, we'll then share that with the rest of the folks on the webinar. So maybe I'll just give you everyone just a moment. And as Jenny mentioned, if additional questions and comments occur to you after today's webinar, you are more than welcome to join Friday's webinar and contribute to that session. So right now I'm not seeing questions coming in. I take that as a good sign that we've been clear. And with that, I'll start wrapping up. There is no problem with ending early. And we, as I mentioned, we want to be very efficient and appreciative of your time. So maybe as you think about commenting or submitting questions, maybe send us a note about what you think might be, from your perspective, a challenging part of updating or preparing the 2018 update of the water plan. We also are recording this session, and both the written and the presentations for later reference. So we just got a question. Yeah, so it's been asked whether the inaugural meeting of the Policy AC and or plenary meeting will have a webinar or a remote option. And the short answer is no, because those meetings are really most effective by having people in the room and participating in the discussions. And we actually have time built into those agendas for table discussions and sharing information with the larger group. So with that, I wanted to, another question.
I was just in plan for the public.
So a question is asked, what outreach will we be planning for general public and ratepayers? Again, the California Water Plan e-news, electronic newsletter, is now 5,500 subscribers strong. It goes to not just folks in California, but other states as well as other countries. And we're really proud that subscribership has continually increased and has never gone down, knock on wood. And we use that as a very important tool for engaging the public. The other is all policy AC meetings, plenary meetings are public meetings, and we notice them as public meetings, and we encourage the participation of folks and use the Water Plan e-news in those announcements. And as Jenny mentioned, tomorrow's e-news will have the headliner item on the inaugural meeting of the Policy AC and the plenary meeting with links to draft agenda, and as materials become available, we'll also post them there. Yeah, and DWR's Public Affairs Office, we work with them when we feel it's important to put out a press release or media release. We do that when we have some significant milestones, and we certainly plan to take advantage of that as we work on 2018. We also will continue to work with the State Agency Steering Committee. They too have public affairs offices, and we have coordinated with them as to get even broader distribution of information. So we will, in addition to the e-news, we generally have set up a listserv for the Policy AC members, and we will send Policy AC and Tribal AC members focused information and outreach via email in addition to the general announcements. So with that, I'm going to first and foremost thank all of the webinar participants and the Policy AC members for participating today. I wanted to again underscore that your participation is very, very important to making the water plan influential, effective, and relevant to all of our work and California water management in general. So I'm really pleased. This is my 4th cycle of the water plan update, and at this point I keep coming back for more. And working with those who are on this webinar are a big part of that, because I don't know if you've heard it, but in every retirement event that I go to, people say, bottom line, it's the people and the relationships. And that is a big part of what California water planning is. And if we're going to solve and crack those 4 barrier nuts without trust, without relationships, and without good communication, I would offer or posit that none of those can be overcome. And so a big part of the California water plan is providing a public venue for having those conversations, that relationship building, and building the trust that we're going to need to work together to find common ground, find common purpose, and ultimately the big part in coming from state government is find common understanding of the effective role of state government in helping you do your work in improving California water management. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now, and thank you. And with that, we're going to adjourn this webinar. Until next time.